All right, everybody, welcome to the Slammers College Recruiting Podcast, delivering expertise to the player, parent, and coach. Very excited about today's episode. We're going to be talking about strength. We're going to be talking about mobility. We're going to be talking about probably the biggest gains that are on the table for a high school player to improve their performance. Is today's guest. Dan, please introduce yourself. Give us an idea of your background and your affiliation with Slammers.
What's going on, guys? I'm Coach Dan Perse. I'm the performance director up at Slammers North. I played college football actually at Colorado Mesa and didn't actually play baseball in college or high school. But I got into Slammers North because when I graduated from college with my kinesiology degree, I knew I wanted to go into sport performance. And the first company that picked me up as a performance coach had a contract with Slammers as well. I went to Broomfield High School, so I grew up in Broomfield, so I know the area well. But started out in there, and then me and our old coach, Leo, we ended up leaving that company that we were at together, and we started Slammers North Performance together. And I've been at Slammers since 2019, I think. So about 7 years now. And I mean, when we first started, it was so small. Like the equipment we had we hardly had enough stuff. And if you look at it now, we've made leaps and bounds of progress in this program. But yeah, so I'm in charge of all the programming and establishing all the performance side of things for all of our baseball teams and other athletes.
As well as a lifter yourself, I see.
Those are the glory days, man. I wish I could still do that.
We clean a jerkin 280 right here. My goodness.
These were the COVID days. I had to be by myself. That's why we're out there on the turf.
Strong man. Coach, I got to tell you, I was helping out last fall. I was helping out with some of the young players, and he has an effortless 30-inch vert. I remember you were demoing the box jumps or whatever, and I was standing in the back of the crew, and I went, hands on hips, 30 inches, coach. Hands on hips, 30 inches off the ground.
I couldn't do that off a trampoline.
I know. It's slowly going lower as I'm continuing on the age here.
Well, it's great. It's great to have you here. We got some good topics. We're actually going to do, we're going to open up in segment one. We'll open up with, I had a coach describe to me when I was playing professionally. I had a coach, he was like, you used to collect baseball cards, right? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, all you got to do is look at your old baseball cards and master those positions. And I was like, I went back and looked at my baseball cards and I was like, wow, that dude's right. And given that, I'm going to take us through some visuals of some present day players and some old players and show their baseball cards, and where I'd like to open up, and we'll get into some of the programming and some of the specifics that an athlete who competes with Slammers has access to through you. But what I was thinking we could do is go through some just basic poses in baseball cards and have you demonstrate and have you speak to how you enhance and how you create enhanced performance through strength and conditioning. And I do want to note that it's strength and conditioning. I think that the strength coach has, because it's easier to say and we don't like syllables, the conditioning gets dropped off, but definitely touch on the balance of the conditioning component that goes into optimizing performance for a baseball player too. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Pull this one up.
I feel like I'm in one of my master's classes doing biomechanical analysis here. Put me on the spot.
All right, let's do this guy right here first. Greg Maddox. You know what was amazing about his position here, coach, is how good of a fielder he was and how it came from that position.
Yeah. It came from him being able to get all the way out extended.
Yeah. That extension has something to do with his movement too. But we're not here to talk about his prowess on the mound. Dan, tell us, for a pitcher, how do they train to get this kind of strength, stability, and flexibility in their body to achieve this position?
Yeah, well, I mean, the very first thing, obviously, that we can see is his entire body weight in this picture. Obviously, this is just a snapshot, but his entire body weight's on that lead leg, right? So that lead leg needs to be a monster, right? But obviously, we're symmetrical athletes, so both legs unilaterally, meaning one at a time, need to be just stronger than hell and stable and just ready to absorb and produce decel as well as accelerate throughout the pitching movement, right? And then obviously his right arm's all the way down damn near in the dirt. Yeah, I mean, that balance and ability to decel and stay in control throughout your trunk and throughout your hips. And I mean, his just loaded position here is, second to none. So athletes in our weight room and really across weight rooms everywhere, but just unilateral work, right? For example, we do rear foot elevated split squats a lot. That's the main focus on that single leg in front. They're hard as hell if you ask any of the athletes, but you're loading up that quad, right? You're working through those hips and stuff like that. And what we like to do in our weight room is we load them differently. Meaning some days we'll hold a dumbbell in each hand. Some days we'll hold a dumbbell in one hand. Some days we'll hold a kettlebell up by the chin. Some days we'll hold one kettlebell down by the side. Sometimes we'll hug a sandbag. Just different ways to find stability through that. So we're just stressing the body and different types of variables and things like that.
Absolutely. All right. What about this guy? A little flexibility in there. You see it?
There we go. See, there's some nice flexibility right there, right? Yeah. So obviously, hamstring flexibility, get that right leg all the way up there. But also, that's more mobility. So a lot of people, they get mobility and flexibility. They think it's the same thing, right? But mobility is your active range of motion. So he's being active. He himself, his musculature is lifting that leg that high. Flexibility would be if somebody was there pushing that leg that high, right? So this is more mobility than anything rather than flexibility. So his hip mobility, his hamstring mobility, his hip flexors right there to get that knee that high, they have to be strong and they have to be well trained. And I mean, again, and then you can't even see the bottom half of this picture, but that left leg, his single leg, needs to be solid throughout, all the way through the glutes, through the hamstrings, through everything like that. And then everything comes to the trunk, right? So his core is well trained to be able to even just get to that position, but then not only get to that position, transfer force and power from that odd space into your pitch out to the batter's box.
Hey, Dan,
I'm a young.
both pictures, notice their head and their eyes are so still. Like, obviously it's a still picture, but to have his head in that position and to see where the head was in the first, how do you train like that to be able to get your body to move without the head being everywhere else except for in the center of the body?
Well, I mean, for example, in our weight room, when we do single leg things for, like I was just talking about the rear foot elevate split squat or single leg RDLs or any type of stuff that has a balance and stability component to it, especially with the kids that are struggling to keep their balance, they're a little wobbly. I tell them all the time, find a stationary point in our weight room, right? Or just, in the batting cages, something like that. Find a stationary point and you're staring at that the whole time, right? So you're training your body to be able to work without obviously looking at it, but you're able to, one, lock in and be intentional with your movements and really focus on your trunk and on your legs to really keep that stability and balance in check.
Amazing.
Speak a little bit to the attention to detail and the technique that I think is especially required. A football player goes into a weight room, they're obviously looking for brute strength, right? That is probably first and foremost. For a baseball player, it's a little bit different. Speak to that mentality, like you mentioned with the eyes and whatnot. What are some of the finer details that are unique to an elite performance training regimen for a baseball player?
Yeah, for baseball, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with football players, especially, D linemen, O linemen. We just want them to be monsters, right? Like we want them to be able to produce as much force. We don't really care too much about how fast you're producing it. But for baseball players, I'm a firm believer in, there is strong enough for baseball players. Like if one of our high school pitchers, if we could train him up and he's got the genetics and the desire and the discipline to get up to, like a 600-pound deadlift. But the truth of the matter is 600-pound deadlift isn't going to make him much better of a baseball player than a 480-pound deadlift, right? But if he can hit that 480-pound deadlift 3 times crisp and keep the speed from the bar to the bottom of the floor to the top of the floor or top of the lift, that's more important to me than just a 1 rep max grinding out big old number on the board, right? To see him be able to repeat quickly high force production at a quick rate, right? That's the most important thing for baseball, is to be able just to be snappy and solid, but fluid at the same time, if that makes sense.
Coach G's favorite player here, I had to include him.
Derek Jeter.
So Dan, obviously we're looking at squat and deadlift here, right? One thing that's really important for a baseball player is to be able to move through this. This goes back to your point about there is strong enough, right? And enlighten us here, since this is a simple translation to how it goes through and how it applies to the weight room. How does an athlete inside of the weight room, for instance, like an infielder, how do they bring the presence of mind in moving their body through space as they gain strength? How do they implement that into their off the field training to maximize their performance?
Yeah, I mean, really for in terms of the exercise standpoint, think of isolating these types of movements. Of course, we have our squat and our deadlift, right, which are big compound movements, using the full body and whatnot. But in our accessories and things like that, we'll do a lot of hip stuff like Cossack squats, which is essentially a wide sumo squat stance, right? But you're going into a lateral lunge and sinking through those hips. But what that's really doing is allowing us to explore space, but with the external resistance of a dumbbell or barbell or landmine or something like that, forcing them to focus on all aspects throughout their body. And they can't be checked out while doing some of these movements, and then also just back to that picture, again, it's a snapshot, but Derek Jeter had to get there, and he's got to get out of there at a certain point. So, unless that ball came right to him in between his legs, which could have happened, but he's got to make a move laterally, left to right, at a fast pace, get squared up, get down into that squat position or deadlift position, right? Now there's that ball, he's got to snap out of it and get that ball to wherever it needs to go, right? So that's a very, this picture of him getting down to that squat, that's, of course, the most basic movement of that part. But being able to move through space, get your feet set, sink your hips, have your trunk controlled, all within a split second to get to that ball and get it out in time, right? Like that's going to be the most important there.
Now, for me, Dan, it was like once he's in that position, Tag, you mind going back to it?
Yep.
So as a defensive, as an infield coach, then I would say, well, the most important piece once he gets to that position is to be able to get out of it and be able to throw. So how does he sink his hands and his feet up? Like what would you talk about from an exercise or from a strength standpoint that would sink him up so that his head wouldn't go forward, right? But his feet would always be underneath him when he tries to get out of that. What kind of strength is he going to need to get out of that movement?
Yeah, that's just technique, right? For specific examples, let's talk about like a goblet squat. Essentially, goblet meaning you're holding a dumbbell or kettlebell right underneath your chin.
Right.
Sinking down into full range of motion is part of what we always talk about in the weight room, right? Not just going for heavy weight and half repping it, but getting your ass to rest, right? And keeping the structure of the chest being up. I always tell kids when they have their slammer stuff on, I should be able to read slammers the entire time throughout every squat and deadlift that we do, right? So staying structured in his lower back and in his trunk and sinking into his hips and while keeping his eyes forward during the movement and not looking around or looking down at the ground, right? We'll really kind of be a little more specific for this type of movement on the diamond.
Call out here too, again, the eyes.
Yeah, look at it.
Notice the flexibility in his neck and in his spine, to how he's able to keep his eyes directly on the ball. And then the other call out here from a strength standpoint is his flat back. There's no arch in that back. Yeah.
Right. Like that, if you look at, that's like a perfect, if he sinks his hips a little more, that's a perfect depth, keeping a flat back, right? Shoulders engaged. Nothing's loose, nothing's floppy, right? Like he's switched on all the way there.
All right. Let's go back to De La Cruz. We'll go here. So one of the keys to both pitchers and hitters, elite pitchers and elite hitters, have great balance. Nolan Arenado's probably the best I've ever seen in my lifetime of his ability to throw accurately while being off balance. Explain how working on balance and your technique in the weight room, there's no way to train this in the weight room, right? But based on his ability, his exceptionally high ability to make these sorts of throws, how do we train to have this kind of body performance in the weight room?
Really, truly, it's training balance in its most basic sense, with, like we were talking about, our unilateral movements to the point where it just kind of becomes second nature, right? Like he's making a play on that ball and he's not thinking to himself like, shit, I don't think I can balance off my right leg to make this throw to first base. He needs to know that he can do that, and it's like that second nature, right? So working on it in the weight room, of course, we're not gonna mimic something like this in the weight room ever. Like I'm not gonna give him a med ball and be like, all right, I want you to grab it from the floor and turn around and throw it. Like that's just crazy, right? But we do things like single leg med ball slams, meaning you're balancing on one leg and you're snapping that med ball down into the floor. So you're producing power off a single leg, right? You're not always gonna have both feet on the floor when you need to make play, especially our infielders and things like that. Right. But learning how to use that musculature to get that ball into the floor, right? If we're in the weight room and the med balls, to get that ball on the floor snappy and as hard as we possibly can while keeping our balance. So producing force and producing power around and in space while having just a single leg on the floor or a single leg and a foot up on a bench or anything like that.
Coach, do you know where Arnado's from?
Do I?
Yeah.
I'm going to say somewhere in California.
Yeah, he's from around the beach. Dan, working out in the sand. Do I become a better baseball player if I work out in the sand?
Your legs will become more conditioned. That's for sure. But that's about it, truthfully.
The one thing
Okay, I have speaking.
Go ahead, Tag.
No. Go ahead, Coach.
Well, the one thing I notice about this single leg multi-angle thrower, there's no instability, right? So if the core was not stable, he couldn't do this. If the quads were not stable, he couldn't do it. If the shoulders, if there was an instability somewhere where he was too big in one area and not big enough in another area, would not allow him to be this agile and flexible and strong.
Yeah, your full body's got to work together to make this happen, to make this throw happen, right? That's not just your arm and your right leg.
Yeah, because
You know,
you
like
look at
the
his
left
arm.
leg. I mean, you can get as deep as the left leg counterbalance and the left arm out to the side a little bit. Like all those types of things are unconsciously things that he's doing, you know?
Yeah, so he's trained his whole body versus just concentrating on one thing.
Exactly. Right. And that's like back to what we were originally talking about, like switching up how you load single leg things, like holding it in one hand or holding like my right foot's on the floor. I can hold it in my right hand or I can hold it in my left hand. That changes everything. Like is the load on the on the left side of the fulcrum point of the mechanical advantage that you're going for or disadvantage you're going for. Right. Or a load in front versus on your back. Changes everything.
What's easy to miss in his angle here because he's leaning is notice how notice his right foot on the ground. It's a little bit covered, but he's in no way disconnected from his ankle to his knee, to his hip, to his shoulder. And then look at his arm angle. It's at perfectly at 90 degrees. He's throwing exactly how he always throws. He's just tilted over.
Yeah. And his head's in the center, but it's turned a little right because that's where he's tilted. But everything is still centered.
No panic in the body either. No panic at all. Go to this guy. What do you see here, Dan?
Hips and trunk, right? I mean, that right hip's coming all the way through, obviously, right? Like he's throwing a right cross. And then obviously the trunk needs to be, I'm sure if you took a picture a half second before this, to be coiled up, you know, nothing floppy, nothing loose, no wet noodles in the weight room, right? Like he'd be, again, switched on and ready to fire off as fast as possible, right? And then that left leg, right? That left leg's all the way extended, almost as a decel for those hips and that trunk.
How about the right leg, Dan, when he's all the way up on the toe? Like you see that in Scotty Scheffler in golf, and you see that in elite baseball players. They're not stuck in their rotation. How does he get to that position?
Right. I mean, again, like so if you took a half second before this, that right leg would be probably full on the floor or on the ground.
Right.
And he'd be low through that hip and knee and ankle, right? And then now he's just on the outside or on the backside of uncoiling that power into that hip, right? So just being able to be fluid with your power production and rotation and things like that is going to be huge for you in baseball, especially on the hitting standpoint.
Where does that rotational power come from in the weight room?
Really rotational exercises. You know, I mean, the transverse plane, you got your sagittal plane, you know, up and down, forward, backwards, the frontal, left to right, and then your transverse, which is the rotational stuff. And I tell you what, like there's an old saying in our football weight room in Mesa, like fights are won in the transverse plane, you know? And so you got to be able to train that. Right. But for us, we have the jammers, we have landmines, we throw med balls every day. We'll load a landmine up and we'll start. I mean, even like that, we'll start in a square, not seated, but solid position and not to rotate those hips and finish up on that toe. And we always talk about it's a kinetic chain. Like if your right foot's in the back, you're driving hard through that right foot all the way through the top of that landmine. Right. And so those things always, anything rotate, you should rotate in the weight room at all times, right? Like every day for a baseball player.
Speak a little bit. Me and Coach were talking about this before you came on, but speak a little bit to the importance, right? Just like you said, they're strong enough in baseball, most definitely. What I said is that now that I, as a coach, watch players in the weight room, I noticed that it's not the strong kids. It's not necessarily the brute strength that translates into baseball performance. It's the controlling of the spine. I'm going to pull this up again and just talk about some of the technical details about how important the spine stability is in translating to baseball performance.
Yeah. So, I mean, in this video right here, right, safety bar reverse lunges, which is a big movement for us throughout the offseason and in season all the time. But their spine needs to be, I mean, we're loading their spine. Obviously, that bar is right across their shoulders, right? So their trunk needs to be rock solid the entire time, right? Their glutes need to be rock solid the entire time. You know, movement like lunges and whatnot, they need to make sure that their hip flexors are ready to go. Tag, if you go back, I think, and go up, there should be a good video. Scroll up. And then see the guy gripping the deadlift there. Second one in, click that one. I think the first, right there. So this is how we train that rotational power, that landmine dip to rotational punch, right? There's the single leg med ball slam we talked about, right? So she's sticking on that single leg. Like obviously that's just a deadlift, but to talk about loading the spine, the deadlift's a great one too, right? Like your spine, you need to make sure that you can brace it well enough that you can handle that sort of stimulus and that sort of stress that comes with these heavy lifts.
Outstanding.
You know, and like a lot of people think like core exercises are sit-ups in your weight or in your living room and planks and stuff, which they are, right? They absolutely are. But just like with any other exercise, you need to load certain things, like you need to load your core. Things like deadlifts are great. Things like squats are great. Things like split stance offset holds are great, right? Here's another good rotational OJC here, right? Our split stance bed ball slam, like that right foot or that back foot's solid into the ground. Here's another way that we load certain things where this is an anterior load on his trunk. Same movement as with our safety bar that's on the back, but now that loads in the front side. And so the front of your core, and you need to make sure your rib cage is stacked. It just changes the movement completely. Strength conditioning, I don't want to say it's an easy job, but like it's pretty simple about what these guys need to do, but it's a creative job too. You know, like you got to get creative in the weight room to make sure that you're doing the right things and not doing taboo snake oil type crap that is just good for Instagram. Right. Yeah. Like it needs to, and you need to make sure that this stuff is actionable and will actually transfer into making them better baseball players. And frankly, the weight room, just better athletes altogether.
I always encourage the players when they're in there to understand they're programming their body and their mind so that when we just watch those movements that they were doing, and then we go and look at the position that Francisco Lindor is in, which is an absolutely beautifully perfect position. That training, like connecting the mind to the body and to not just think that you're in there to get stronger, but you're in there to program your body to achieve certain positions. Why I chose baseball cards to do this. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that mind-body connection? And for me, the visualization, I don't think I've ever done a set. Like if I can't do it 10 times, I'm usually doing the set in my mind before. And particularly as a performance athlete, I'm translating that movement and that performance set into how I'm going to perform. Speak a little bit to that.
Really, that's all intentional, right? Like to be an intentional athlete is be intentional with everything that you do in the weight room. You know, and it's a shame sometimes, like the weight room, so not with our guys mostly, but in big groups and stuff, some people come into the weight room and they just, check the box. Like, all right, we got yoga push up with a reach. We got single leg med ball side. We got this, and they'll just do it to get it done. Right. But if you do every rep to get something out of that rep, right, it changes everything. And I mean, that's the same thing with your skill stuff for any sport, not just baseball. But if you're intentional with your time and intentional with your movements and you're locked in, and especially if you have a good understanding of why you're doing this, it helps so much. I mean, that was my big mistake growing up is I was intentional in the weight room and I trained every day for football and all that stuff. But it took me until I graduated with kinesiology and got my master's in exercise physiology to really, truly like understand why we were doing some of these things. But if I was a young athlete and I knew why we were doing everything, one, the motivation would have been better, the discipline would have been better, like everything would have been better because you know why you're doing stuff. But to blindly go in and just follow a cookie cutter program, right? I mean, you can get more out of it if you're just intentional with your time in there.
It's interesting.
Coach, before we get to the last one, go ahead.
Oh, it's interesting when you look at players at the highest level, right? There's three misconceptions in my mind, right? They're a lot smaller than what you think, some of them. Like you see him in person and you're like, wow, he's a lot smaller than what you think. So you see Mookie Betts and you would be like, wow, he's a lot smaller than what I really thought he would be like. But you underestimate how strong he is and you underestimate how explosive he is. So you may see him stature-wise and be like, oh, he's not that big, but he's maximized that 180 pounds or 175 pounds that he has. And it's unbelievable. He plays like he's 225 in a 175-pound body. Then you look at, look at some of the bigger players like Judge, and you're like, wow, how enormous he is. and you forget how agile, what his mobility is like, what his flexibility is like, and how explosive he is. So you really get thrown off sometimes when you see how big they are, but you forget that he can play at 180 pounds, but he's 265. Like he moves. Like
exactly.
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you got the one body that God gave you, right? I mean, if you're a 5'10", 150-pound, sophomore in high school, and you want to be like the 6'5", 230-pound, freak of nature senior, like, listen, man, that's not the body that God gave you. We got to figure out how to get the most out of your body to make sure that you're doing things correct in the weight room. Luckily, I mean, at our age that we work with, but it's a little more broad spectrum. But when you get to the professional level, right? I mean, that's their job. They need to be locked in on what their body's capable of, how their body's going to move, and how to get the most out of theirs. And again, knowing when strong is strong enough.
Yeah, it's like some kids, you look at these high school kids a lot and what is their goal? And sometimes their goal is like, oh, I want to put on 15 pounds. And it's like, I don't understand that mentality. I know you want to get bigger, stronger, faster, but you need to take what you have and maximize exactly what you have. Because when you look at the elite level athletes, they have taken what they had and maximized it. Their full goal wasn't to gain 15 pounds. In fact, probably lose 10 pounds and put 4 pounds of muscle on.
Exactly. Right. Like the number on the scale, that's one thing that I feel like I get some taboo looks at me for. Like, I would get rid of the scale across all things, unless you're a wrestler or a boxer or somebody that needs stuff. The number on the scale doesn't mean that much. What matters is your percent of body fat and your muscle mass and things like that. Like we have kids all the time. They'll be a little shorter. They're 5'7", and they say they want to gain 20 pounds in the summer. And I'm just like, brother, you don't have the frame for that. Where are you going to put it? Like, I'm lucky. I'm 6'4". I've got these long bones. I can put that kind of weight anywhere, but if you're shorter and you've got small levers, that body's not gonna be able to handle that much weight, right? So, I mean, a good thing would be 5 pounds of muscle, but increase your power production, increase your 3-rep max deadlift, and just like things like that. So, like the number on the scale, I would tell kids, don't worry about it too much.
I hear that a lot.
Of course, the high school kids that we're working with, it'll come, man. I was a string bean Jones until I graduated from Broomfield in 2013. I weighed 180 pounds for 4 years, and then I went off to summer of college. I was 220 pounds, in just one summer. It's just my body matured. I had the frame for it, and then I gained 75 pounds throughout college. Like I finished at 250 playing tight end.
Could you still jump 30 inches high when you were 180 pounds?
I did, yeah. And then actually, when I was 240 pounds, I was jumping like 38 because we had a good strength conditioning. Like I got bigger and stronger and faster and more powerful.
Yeah, and that's exactly that. You were able to keep that. You never lost that explosive.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
I had a couple of players this past off season, and they were going in opposite directions, right? They were reaching that point where they really wanted to get recruited and they know they needed to make some changes. Talk a little bit, touch on what are the max healthy gains that you can make in, say, a year, 6 months, and what are the max losses that a kid who's perhaps trying to go through a body type change in order to help himself out? Speak a little bit to that spectrum.
I mean, max is really thresholds for anybody is going to be pretty individual, and I mean, of course, it has to do with what they're doing, not just in the weight room, but year round in the weight room, on the field, in the kitchen, all those things, right? But truthfully, I mean, in a year for a young high school kid, the amount of changes these kids are going through, I mean, they're going through puberty, they're not mature yet, we're putting a stress on their body and essentially just building a good base for when their body is mature enough to start putting on that weight. If we're talking about just like body weight and muscle mass and things like that, so like once they're over 18, and of course there's outliers, there's some kids' bodies are more mature than others at a certain age. But once they turn 18, they get into college, their body's ready to really start stacking on that muscle mass and those performance thresholds. But really, truly just in the weight room, if you're making sure that your body is being able to handle the stress of heavier weights more repeatedly and more often. And the other thing is too, is just staying consistent. Because if you train super hard in the wintertime for baseball players, you train for 4 months in our AVP program, we make all kinds of changes and we do great. Season comes and you stop training, right? Like you're not going to gain any adaptations, right? So now you're going to lose a lot of that. Your baseline might be a little higher, but now we're starting from scratch again in the summertime. And then you're back up, and then you just got this undulating graph of high performance. You stop training, low performance, right? You get training again, you're back to high, you're back to low. And then it's just like this up and down stair step. But if you can learn how to train in season, which is what we harp on all the time, and just stay consistent in the weight room for the entire calendar year, like you will do in college, right? You're going to be able to just stack days, right? You're going to get that increase in the wintertime. And then even if you just stay here during the season, right? Then you can start building on this peak for summertime, and then it just keeps climbing, right? And it just is, it's compounding interest, right? If you're trying to save money in your bank account, but you keep pulling $100 out every week, but you put 200 away, so you're not going to get to your goal at the time. But if you just keep staying consistent and put it away, and every week put $200 away and whatnot, you'll be able to, at the end of that, it's compounding interest with more to work with.
I was going to speak a little bit. I was going to speak at this later, but since you bring it up, let's talk about it now. In season versus out of season training. Just speak to the kind of the basics, right? So how many times per week? What sort of intensity do I have in the off season? And then particularly if I'm on a competitive team that's leaving the state a lot, what do I do to maintain my strength in season that's different? Do I do the same program that I did in the off season in order to maintain strength, or do I modify it a bit?
So really, I mean, again, that's the fun part about my job, right? That's my job is in season training. Really, one of the main differences is the volume change. Volume meaning the amount of times you're getting into the weight room, right? So our off season is 3 to 4 times a week. During in season, I mean, I'm okay with twice a week, and so to some kids that may seem like not a lot, but they can come in more and stuff like that. But then in the intrinsic part of the programming, you're going to have less sets, right? And probably less reps as well. But the intensity is going to stay high, meaning the amount of weight that's on the bar for layman's terms, right? The biggest misconception about in-season training is everything should be super lightweight, right? And almost like bodybuilding type exercises you see a lot, or nothing at all, because a lot of times they don't want to be sore and things like that. But you want to keep that level of stress to a point, right? Because your volume of actual baseball activities is going to skyrocket in season. So you need to counterbalance that with taking some volume away in the weight room. Not completely exit it out, but like our in-season program, if they come in and they're locked in, after they get done with their warm-up, it could be a 30-minute lift, I mean, their warm-up takes about 15 minutes. So you're thinking 45 to an hour in the weight room, which is not that much time, twice a week. But they're still going to deadlift heavy, but instead of 5 sets of 5 reps at 85% of their 1 rep max, it'll be 3 sets of 3 reps at 85 of their 1 rep max. And I'll give them long breaks in between, but we still want to make sure we're touching that red line and getting back to recovering in between these things, right? And then we'll get to it, the recovery outside of the weight room is huge.
If I'm a parent and my kid's on a travel schedule and they wake up and they don't want to go train, give me the pocket guide, the short list of questions to ask my kid to know whether I should challenge them to go get their workout in, or if they truly need a day of rest.
Well, I mean, if I was to put myself in the parent's shoes, it'll be tough. When my son gets older, obviously he'll have all the bells and whistles, so I'll be able to test him in bed. Like, you're not that tired. But if I was a parent, what I would tell him is, truthfully, I would tell him, go today and you can take tomorrow off. That's kind of my key for me personally and for anything. One, because you make them get up out of bed. They get into the weight room. I'm saying they're in bed, I'm guessing, because we lift in the mornings, right? They get to the weight room, they get their lift in. I guarantee you by the time they're walking out of that weight room, they're going to come back tomorrow, right? It's most of the time, it's just, I'm tired. I don't really feel like doing it. John and Abby stayed up late last night and we don't feel like doing it. We're all tired. Hey, you can have a break tomorrow. If you still feel like you need a rest break from the weight room after you go get your session in today, then you can take tomorrow off. And 90% of the time, they're going to feel good after leaving that weight room.
Great advice.
Now, me personally in the weight room, like what we did with our in-season guys or like fall guys, every day they'd come in and they would do a grip strength test on the right and left hand, and they would do a vertical jump, right? And so my threshold was, if your grip strength was 20 pounds less than what it normally is, like your average, that's telling me that, yeah, maybe you are a little gassed out. What we're going to do is just take some volume off. So if we had, 3 sets of 3 on trap bar deadlift, we're going to go 2 hard working sets of 3. Right there, and we're just going to take a set off. If their jumps, like my threshold would be, if their vertical jump was about consistently 3 or 4 inches lower than what it's normally at, and that tells me that, yeah, maybe your central nervous system is a little gassed and we're doing a lot. Maybe we should take off some of the plyometric work and stuff like that. Well, let's hit what you are feeling like hitting and feeling good about. But the thing is, these poor kids, they're freaking busy, man. To give it to those kids, they go to school all day. They usually have some type of hitting practice or skill work. They still have homework on top. They have the weight room. These travel ball guys, they're traveling like crazy. So that is something that can come up, but more often than not, they're not as gassed out as they think they are, because they're going to get to college and there's going to be a strength coach that's going to be in their ass. You got to be able to go home and sit in it.
Let me help the parents read between the lines. What they should probably tell their kid is, what does Dan say? Because you're paying attention.
Honestly, to tell parents, I would say hand them the phone and say, call Dan and ask him what he thinks if you should take a day off.
And Dan, could I have my wife call you on the compound interest thing so you could tell her she can't take $200 out all the time?
Absolutely. I was going to say, don't take much financial advice from me, but I can figure out a way to work that.
I'm going to have her call you on the compound interest thing, because that was brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's all it is.
Coach, last question for you before we move on to the next segment. As a coach,
Yes.
right? As a college coach, are you watching your players in the weight room? And if so, and when you do, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I think as a college coach, I think the one thing that I would say about myself, that I am a movement expert. Like that's what I watch movement. I watch movement on the field all day long, to watch them hit, play defense, run, angles, throw. Same thing I want to see in the weight room. I want to watch them in the weight room to see what kind of strength and flexibility they have. Obviously, speed is one thing that I want to see in there. Strength is something that I want to see, and then I want to see how they can deliver, right? What can they deliver in the weight room? Meaning, how can they deliver the weight and do the lifts? So yeah, I watch a lot to see if there are imbalances, and if there's going to be issues where we really need to watch out for certain things for certain players so that they don't get injured. But more than anything, I'm looking at those guys that are explosive. I'm looking for that explosiveness in that weight room.
Not weight.
Chime in on that too. Obviously, I'm not a baseball coach, but when I was the assistant strength conditioning coach at Mesa for a year, the baseball coaches would come in, and all the team coaches really, but obviously they'd be looking at the physical attributes of the athletes, but what else are they doing in the weight room? Like when they get done with, the easy stuff, are they doing all the reps? Are they doing all the sets? Yeah. For example, the football team, there's 60 guys going at the same time, right? But then after that, when they rack their weight, are they spotting their partners, right? Are they helping their partner get their weight on? Like if I have 315 on the bar and tag, you need 350. Am I helping you get that weight on the bar? Am I there spotting with you? Like, am I helping you through those reps? Am I gassing you up and doing that? Like, are you working together? It's a team aspect in the weight room. Am I putting my weights away? In the Mesa weight room, the Maverick logo had to be a certain way, right? Or everyone would get in trouble. Am I going through and checking to make those things are right? Like small details, right? Like minor little details in the weight room, they go a long way. And the weight room's a perfect place for it, because it's not the most romantic place, right? Most baseball players want to be great baseball players. They're not going to college to play baseball just so they can go into a college weight room and get huge, right? It's a spot that, to be honest, most of the guys, they don't want to be there. It's 6 a.m. Everyone's tired. Who knows what got into yesterday, if coach got in their ass. But are you there, again, with intention? Are you intentional about what you're doing in there? Are you there to help your teammates, right? Are you there to get better yourself? Like it's a communal thing.
Very much.
All right, Dan, let's get into the numbers. If a player is targeting a Division I scholarship, what are the actual strength benchmarks for the squat, the deadlift, and power output? What are the D1 programs? What are they testing? And what do the staffs expect from incoming freshmen?
Well, really, truly, I mean, again, it's individualized and stuff. You can't just say like, all right, we're not going to recruit anybody without a 450-pound squat. Like obviously, like we talked about, there's different athletes everywhere. But to be I've looked up some numbers for us from some of my textbooks and whatnot, from things that we test, grip strength, to be in the 90 or 100 percentile of grip strength, you should have a total grip strength, meaning to do your right, you do your reps, you combine them, like 286 to almost 350 pounds of total grip strength, right? Our AVP guys, which is freshman to senior, so it's a little skewed, right? We're sitting around in the 50th percentile right now, right? So our total grip strength average was 236 pounds through the AVP group, right? But D1 athletes, that number is all the way up as far as 350 to 400 pounds of grip strength total, right? So that means our high school guys are in the 10% for grip strength, right? So that just shows you, one, how much of a freak athlete you really are in the D1, really D1, D2, D3. Any college athlete is going to be pretty much of a freak, especially once they get to their senior year and things like that. For power output, the way we test it is a vertical jump, right? There's all kinds of different ways you can do it. You can do force plates, you could do any type of stuff like that. But we do the vertical jump. For high school, the 90th to 100th percentile is 27 to 29 inches, right? Our slammers guys, they're sitting in 78th percentile, with their average being about 24 and a half. But D1 guys, 90 and 100th percentile, those are 31 and 35 inches. So, I mean, the top of the top in D1, those guys are jumping out of the gym. And our slammers guys, our high school guys, we're seeing about the 30th percentile compared to that metric. Now, again, I mean, remember, D1's the cream of the crop, and we're talking about the cream of the cream of the crop. You know, if we're talking about the 90th and 100th percentile. For trap bar deadlifts, this is what we test, right? I mean, our guys averaged out about 376 pounds for a 3-rep max. That's really good for high school guys, right? I mean, once you get to college, that number, you're going to want to see about 450 for sure. But back squat, it's said that a 400-pound back squat is pretty standard in the college weight room. And it will be. Like, for these parents and these players that will listen to this, when you guys get to college, you're going to see some of the most outlandish stuff in the weight room on a daily basis. Like, you're going to see some of the most craziest feats of athleticism and feats of strength just every day, just walking through. And it's going to be like nothing to some of these guys. But that's just because they train so much and they're so intentional and they have a good program and things like that. So, yeah. So, I mean, in terms of the threshold to be like where you need to hit, but you should make sure that you're at least 2 times body weight on your back squat, or 2 times body weight, 2.5 times body weight on the trap bar deadlift. Like, you better be able to produce force.
Yes, you should. Yes, you should. Coach, what physical attributes beyond just raw strength numbers does a college coach actually notice when watching a high school player? What does an underdeveloped body look like on tape, and what does an appropriately developed body look like?
Yeah, I think you look at the core first, right? You look at the core, you look at the legs, and then you look at the explosiveness and the movement. How can they hold their movement and balance? And I think when you look at an underdeveloped body, like, you see them bend differently, right? Because they don't go down first, like they go forward first, right? When you look at an underdeveloped body as a hitter, right, you see him tip over a lot. You don't see him hold that rotation. When you look at an underdeveloped body from the catching standpoint, like, things are going different directions. When you look at a very developed body, you're in one direction towards second base, right? And so you look at kids. If you go and look at a speed guide and you watch a kid that can really run the bases, and you want to watch him steal bases, he can move towards second base and towards first base at the same speed, right? So he could get back to the bag safely, or he could explode towards the base. And so you look at that, the ones that are not stable, they have to cheat and they have to lean over, and they can't hold their strength, their core strength, to get them back to the bag to be safe. So you look at that from an underdeveloped standpoint. Drew Maggi was the best base stealer I have ever seen, right? And what I noticed most about him was he could take his lead and he could get to his speed within a step and a half, right? His maximum speed. He was going in a step and a half, but he could also get back to the bag faster than anybody I've ever seen. So there was something about his core stability that was phenomenal. And that's what made him such a great base stealer. So I think you look at all of those things, right? Repeatable delivery in pitchers. When a pitcher can't repeat his delivery, you know there's some kind of strength instability. When he repeats that delivery, you're like, oh, he's a pretty physical player. And, you're hoping that you can train all of them, but you need them to be ready now as freshmen. It used to be you could bring them in as a freshman, develop them until they're juniors, but now they need to be closer to being ready now than ever before.
Dan, if I'm a parent that's watching this and I have a young kid that I know that wants to play in college, when is the earliest time that a kid should consider strength resistance training?
Well, the age-old assumption was that too early strength training stunts your growth, right? And so, but there's zero evidence to support any of that ever. And so, really, I mean, as long as they're doing it right, we start our guys around 12 and 13 with our youth stuff, but if you're a parent and you want to just start teaching them about how to move their body, when these kids are 10 years old, make sure they're doing their push-ups, do squats in the living room, right? Have them doing sit-ups, literally just the basic stuff. And it's not going to affect you negatively as long as you're doing it correct, right? Like, obviously musculoskeletal injuries can happen if you do something wrong, no matter how old you are, if you're a little kid or if you're an old man. But as far as the earliest, I mean, get them moving as soon as possible. If you have a 6-year-old, get them jumping around, get them climbing, get them hanging on monkey bars and playing through the playground. Like, I know that people don't think about it like that, but I do, like, it's body movement, it's body awareness. To go back to what Coach was talking about, can they move their body efficiently? Like once they get to college, are they efficient with their movements? Like, is there any wasted movement and stuff like that? Are they stumbling around when they're getting down to a ground ball? Or do they snap down and snap up? That starts at an early age, just learning your body and learning how to move through space. And then as far as the weight room, I mean, I love 12 to 13-year-olds coming in and learning the basics.
When at Slammers, at what age do kids start getting in the weight room?
13, 12, 13. So our 13U guys are our youngest guys in the weight room, like consistently. We'll do, our summer speed camp and stuff. And that's like 10 to 12 years old. We don't really get them in the weight room, like working with barbells or dumbbells or anything like that. But we'll get the med balls out in the field and have them like hold them and do the goblet squats just to, see how it feels to have a sort of external resistance to make sure you're working through full range of motion. We'll teach them about technique of sprints, but also techniques of squats, technique of push-ups and stuff like that. But for Slammers guys consistent in the weight room, they see me at about 12, 13 years old.
All right. Next section, let's get into the upper body mobility and shoulder health, the age-old question, the big crossroads that everybody's concerned about. But Dan, tell me, what does a healthy, high-performing baseball shoulder actually look like, and how far are most high school players from that baseline when they arrive at a college program?
Really, I mean, it's just strong rotator cuffs, strong forearms. I heard Ari talking on the podcast before, Ari, our PT in house. He made a great point. And you asked him about what prehab exercise should every young baseball athlete do, and his point was like anything to help performance is going to help prehab as well. And I love that he said that because it's just a strong, mobile shoulder, right? Your scapula should be able to move and rotate vertically and horizontally throughout the shoulder, right? Your rotator cuff obviously should be mobile. You should be able to, it should be conditioned to, like Ari was talking about. You should be able to repeat a lot of movements with good range of motion and good performance and things like that. But I always say strong and long. You should be able to create strength and length. Really, that's with any muscle group that we're talking about, but with the shoulder especially through our pitching mechanics. But you should never see a kid that's super uptight, right? Like you don't want to see a kid that looks like a little bodybuilder, because they might just be immobile. You want to definitely be able to have the free range of motion, the full range of motion, and then a really strong shoulders, tendons, ligaments, everything like that.
Give us a protocol. A player watches this today and wants to start on upper body mobility immediately. What do the first 2 weeks look like? Be specific.
First 2 weeks, really truly, for example, if he's coming to see me, a lot of that stuff's in the warm-up. So the first thing you're doing when you're getting in there is you're moving your scapulas, right? Things like cat cows, things like scapular punches or push-ups. I like hanging from pull-up bars. I like the decompression part. I like the tensile strength aspect of that. Your internal, external rotation, of course, wall bands, everyone's familiar with, right? But again, just like with all of our exercises, you need to be intentional with it. Far too many times in Slammers, I see kids over there just messing with the wall bands, just goofing around like it's recess. If you can do a full crossover symmetry with shoulder flexion, shoulder extension, T's, your Y's, your external rotation to press, and holding those movements and that mobility through where with resistance from a band or a small weight would be great. We like CARs, which is controlled articular rotations. Articular meaning just around a joint. You can do hip CARs, you can do ankle CARs, you can do shoulder CARs. We do shoulder CARs all the time. I have them hold a 2.5 pound, 5 pound weight, and you just go up, you externally rotate, you press, down, right? And just being intentional with those movements. Super lightweight, but you got to get the full range of motion, get a full press, let that scapula open up, let it move, let it be free. Right. Right. So that's really the main thing that they'll start with, or they'll have that with accessory work with some of their other body stuff.
Great. Coach, I'm going to kick off the nutrition and recovery section with you. So tell me, when you see an athlete that is not resting and recovering and feeding themselves the right nutrition, what does that look like? How can you tell?
Yeah, you see the body composition more than anything, but you see the movements, and you could see it in their eyes. You could see it, you could see it in just their attentiveness, alertness that they are at practice. So real big thing for us, right, was keeping track of how much water they drank every day, what kind of protein and food they were putting in their body, and then what kind of rest. Sleep was the number one factor that caused most of the athletes to struggle. So we need that so much, but we changed so much in the dugout. As when I grew up as a player, like couldn't drink anything, you couldn't eat anything, that was a sign of weakness, right? At football practice when you were young, couldn't drink water in the middle of the summer because that was weakness, right? We've gotten so
For
much
watching.
smarter. Yeah, we've gotten so much smarter now. We have food in the dugout, right? During the game so that guys can eat during the game the right kind of something that gives them energy, brain energy, physical energy, right? Always having some type of water for them, always some kind of electrolyte that helps them. So the recovery process, we had a regen room at USF late where we didn't know anything about that, but guys had to eat as soon as their lift was over. They couldn't just go to class, couldn't just lift, go to class and not put something in your body because you were wasting that. And I'm not an expert on that, but I did understand that we needed all those things. I just don't know like the technical pieces of that. That would be a nutritionist.
Well, that was why I asked you, is because you don't know the technical pieces, but you could tell.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I've learned how to change what we feed, post game or what we feed pre-game. I've learned so much on tailoring those meals. I just thought it was consumption early, and then we really had to tailor that so that we could get them the right types of food. And I think that's the biggest piece, is what you put in your body and then how you rest.
Dan, give me the nutrition, rest, and recovery best practices for, since we're in May and kids are about to go out and play. So let's say they play 4 to 5 games a week, right? It's heavily loaded on the weekends. Let's assume that they're going to be lifting at least twice a week to maintain their strength. Give me the general best practices for nutrition, rest, and recovery for that kind of an athlete.
I mean, I tell this to all our athletes all the time, especially when they start asking me about supplements, is don't even think about buying any supplement until you're doing the 3 free ones correct. I know they're not completely free, but what you're eating, your nutrition needs to be spot on, your sleep needs to be spot on, and your hydration needs to be spot on. If you're not doing those 3 right and you're going out and buying supplements, you're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. You know what I mean? Like you need to make sure that you're getting those things locked in. For
So how
sleep,
much sleep? How much sleep per night should I average if I need to
8
recover
hours.
from an elite
Yeah.
athlete?
I mean, go for at least 8 hours, right? Like in the 8 hours of good quality sleep, not 8 hours of you were laying on Instagram and YouTube and waking up in the middle of the night and all that stuff. Put your phone away and get a good night's sleep, because the adaptations and the changes that we get from training, they don't come from the stress and stimulus we put on them in the weight room. They come from recovering from that stress and stimulus, right? If you're going to Grand Junction and back in your car every day and you don't stop for gas, you're going to run out of freaking gas, right? Like you got to stop and sleep. You got to eat. You got to hydrate. Food wise, protein wise, if you're trying to build muscle, a lot of people say a gram of protein per pound of body weight. For me personally right now, that'd be 230 grams. And like, that's crazy. And
hard.
that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot,
It is a
but
lot.
aim for the stars, you land on the moon, right? If I need 200 grams of protein as a high school kid, but I only end up getting 175, that's still pretty damn good. And that's good. You're going to get what you need, So just making sure you have that, and carbohydrates, we don't have to worry about it as much with our male athletes, obviously, but our female athletes are unfortunately have fallen victim to social media, and they think carbohydrates are the worst, right? I mean, you need to eat like an athlete. Like an athletic diet is not the same diet that your mom who's trying to lose weight is going to be on. Like you're fueling yourself to do a specific thing. And the amount of stress and stimulus you're putting on your body now at a young age is so high that you need to recover from that. So carbohydrates and protein need to be up there. Your carbs are your fuel, your protein are your building blocks. I mean, you got to at least be eating 4,000 calories a day, I'd say, if not more, with that schedule that you just laid out there. Like it's a lot of calories, but these grown boys, they'll do it. I mean, ask these parents, they know their grocery bills are high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a 170-pound athlete. I need to eat 175 grams of protein. I need to sleep at least 8 hours uninterrupted by a phone or by anything else. And then tell me about water. How many ounces of water should I be drinking if I'm a 175-pound athlete?
I tell athletes, get a gallon a day. I mean, at minimum, you'll cover your bases if you have a gallon a day, and that sounds crazy, but you can do it. Like this water bottle, I think I need 4 of these or 5 of these to get a gallon a day. And it's really not that hard, and especially when you're drinking, when you're training, at night, in the middle of the day, just get a good water bottle and attach it to your hip, and then also like coach said, all the electrolytes that you need, your potassium, your sodium, especially if you're sweating a ton. Me, I was the sweatiest athlete. I still am, but I sweat so much. I had to replace my sodium like crazy. and some athletes not as much, but all those types of things like elements, right? Or even just mineral salt in your water if you want a cheaper option. Like that's good. Like that'll be okay. Especially when you're playing in these tournaments out in Arizona and you got 3, 4 games at 4 p.m. in Phoenix in July. Like you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself. That's a high stress situation for these kids.
I'm going to ask this next question from a perspective with some grace, So tell me what I should not do 2 days in a row before a game or after a game. Maybe it happens once. Maybe I hit in and out after a game, get over late night, and I got to do the thing. But what should I not do 2 days in a row as my pregame meal and as my postgame meal?
Under fuel or just poorly fuel. I mean, if you're eating pancakes and syrup for breakfast every morning, like that's not going to give you the same as 3 scrambled eggs and cottage cheese and a whole grain bagel and stuff like that. Making sure that the nutrients you're getting are nutrient dense and not just calorically dense. Like you got to make sure that it's full of the good stuff. What I tell kids all the time, if you can't kill it or grow it, you shouldn't eat it. Right? That's our rule. That may be morbid, but that's what we say. Or for younger kids to try not to be as morbid. If your great granddad couldn't eat it, you shouldn't eat it. Right? Like if it's not something that they grew or they went and hunted, that they went and got, you shouldn't really be worrying about it too much. Obviously, you have the grocery store and things like that. But your fruits, your veggies, your good meats, like your good whole grains, your rices, solid oils for fats, your avocados. It's just good, hearty, healthy meals. And then the other thing, and the activity point, you make sure you're moving your body. If you have a game in 2 days, make sure you're not sitting on your ass playing video games, eating potato chips, and then trying to go out and rev your body to red line and perform at your best. Get out, if you don't have a lift or something like that, but like get out for a walk, right? Or go hit a couple sprints or a few sprints on the field or something. Like don't be afraid to turn on your central nervous system and get things primed up. When it's cold outside, you start your truck 10 minutes before you leave because you need to give it time to prime tougher. I do the same with your body on a daily basis.
I got some good advice when I started playing in really hot weather, and it was you need 5 handfuls of something bright, which is basically your fruits and your vegetables. And you typically, the brighter the fruit or vegetable, the better it is for you. And you need at least 5 handfuls of those a day. That really helped me sustain energy. And the thing is too, it's like, if you're on a good team and you're playing competitively, that means you might need to play up to 3 games on a Sunday after you've already probably played 3 or 4. When you're playing in that championship game on Sunday, and this is the difference that elite guys, particularly at the next level, that they're preparing and they're eating in a way that makes them that when I got to be ready for that 3rd game, I should not be totally drained. That is when I want to perform my best, when I'm playing against the best competition and I'm having the most eyes watch me. That's the kind of attitude that you need to have when you're resting and you're recovering and you're feeding your body with fuel, because that's the game that might be the game. You just need one coach to love you. Ain't that right, Nino? You just need that one guy. You just need one. And the chances are the greatest likelihood that person is going to be at that game and see you set yourself apart. And it could be as simple as having the right energy in your body.
I tell kids when they have multiple games in a row, bring snacks. My go-to just performance enhancing snack is trail mix. I love trail mix. I tell kids, if you like trail mix, you will be a step ahead of everybody with your nutrition as an athlete. 1 cup of trail mix is 20 grams of protein, 45 grams of carbs, healthy fats from all the nuts. You got sugars from the M&Ms in there and stuff. You're covering all your bases and your raisins and stuff like that. Eat that between games. You're set for the next one. You don't need a plate of fettuccine Alfredo when you have a game in an hour, right? You just need something small. A Cliff Bar is a great thing. Trail mix obviously is what I just said, and then think about like what you're ingesting through fluids as well. There's high carbohydrate drinks, like for instance, Body Armor is a great one. That's a quicker way to, that's something that they should be drinking during the game, right? Like you're replenishing your carbohydrate stores, your energy stores during the game or in between if you really have like 30 minutes or something like that. Like that's a fast acting way to get that performance benefit from your nutrition, as you go throughout these long days of games. And once you're done with being meat and potatoes of your day and you got dinner, stuff yourself. Like go crazy. Don't hold back. Get yourself 2, 3 plates of whatever you're having and obviously make sure it's nutrient dense. But in between those games, small little snacks that are, again, nutrient dense, trail mix, instead of a candy bar or something like that.
Yeah, the reality of elite performance athletics, which any high school kid that wants to play in college, they would be well advised to follow an elite performance exercise strength and conditioning and recovery plan. And the realization is it's a lifestyle. It's an absolute lifestyle. You should be feeling like you have to go to the bathroom all of the time because your metabolism is so high and it's getting rid of the toxins so you can operate at a high level. I remember it was exhausting to eat. Like there's sometimes he didn't want to eat, but man, you got to eat because you got to understand the fuel standard that you need to do it. And I guess I don't know what the science is that as it works, it's all the way down by the poundage. But I played at 210 pounds. And when I played every day in the summer, I had to consume at least 5,000 calories just to maintain body weight.
100%. Yeah.
That's
I mean,
exhausting. 5,000 calories is a lot.
exactly. I mean, think about it. It's your metabolic equivalent of calories burned is 2,000. That's where the whole daily caloric intake for normal people is 2,000. If you wake up in the morning and you lay in bed and just blink and breathe, you're going to burn 2,000 calories. That's what your body needs to keep the lights on, essentially. But the second you add on your strength training, your games, all that stuff, you're burning through so many calories. I mean, when I was trying to gain weight to play tight end for football, I was on like a 10,000 calorie a day diet. We were doing 2-a-days and I was training in the weight room, hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And it was like the hardest stuff that we've ever done. But you have to get it in because I'm burning 6,000 calories a day just by walking around, going to class, playing games, running, training, all that stuff. Like, people don't realize how much you really need to be athletically fed for fueled, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah. Dan, for the player watching right now, 15-year-old who wants the scholarship, what is the one thing you need him to walk away from this episode and do? Not someday, tomorrow.
Well, I mean, God, have intent. We've been talking about intent. Be intentional with everything you do throughout your day. Of course, hopefully, I would say join a strength conditioning program. I'm going to assume they're already on one, right? But be intentional with your time in there. Be intentional with what you eat. Don't skip breakfast, right? Make sure you're going to sleep. Be intentional with your off time. Be intentional with your recovery. Be intentional at practice. Just everything should surround going to college. Like everything you do, you should be thinking about it. On the weekends, you should be thinking about what am I doing to get better to go to college, right?
And tell me this, if I'm doing the same workout program, is it different if I'm doing it by myself as opposed to with a group and with a coach?
Yeah. I mean, I say one of the best training tools is a training partner. It's just better. You can compete, you can learn from each other. You can help each other out. Obviously, a coach being there is best too, just to make sure you're doing things right and to have somebody to have those eyes on you and make those little tweaks and help you through the understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing stuff. Because again, these kids are busy, man. I mean, we had guys in last night and they had 3 finals for AP geometry and social studies and all that crap. And then they had to go to baseball practice or had a game. And then they got in with me in the weight room. And it's like, I can't be mad at them that they don't understand why we're doing single leg rear foot elevated split squat with an anterior offset load. But I'm not going to be like, wow, you don't get that. It's like, that's what I'm there for. Ask me questions. We're putting a lot on their plate. Having a good coach helps you take some of that off your plate that you can just be cool with, have a good relationship, and ask them good questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think for the player and for the parents out there, I didn't really start doing any workouts alone till I was probably 25 or 6. I just don't think you're ready. I don't think you're ready to go work out on your own as a teenager. I don't even think that kids in college are really ready to do that. Surround yourself with a group, surround yourself with some expertise, give yourself a sense of being on stage and performing. That's important because you're learning how to perform, and that happens in the weight room too, not just on the field.
Oh, 100%. I mean, in college, max days were the craziest days in the weight room. Like the atmosphere down there, I wish I could somehow just mimic that in the weight room for the high school kids to see what they're going to get themselves into. I mean, it was it was a riot, essentially. Like on max squat day, we would go get the big bass drums from the band that strap on the front. And our D lineman would stand there and bang on the drum while you're taking the bar off the rack. You got 40 guys screaming at you. Coaches are screaming. There's cameras in there and stuff. Like, that's awesome. And then I go and squat now at Sanders by myself. And I'm like, this is crazy how different it is. Like, to the kids who are going to go to college with most of our Slammers guys, the weight room in college is one of the most magical places. It is so much fun. It's insane. It's one of the most intense things that you can put yourself through, but you're going to come out of the other side so much better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach, last question for you. And for the coach, the high school coach who's working with 14 of these kids right now, what is the one thing that they can do this week to change the physical development trajectory of their program?
Yeah, I think they could have intent was a great word, but you have to have some type of, you have to understand your practice organization in order to do it. Is there enough time spent on mobility? Is there enough time spent on strength? Is there enough time spent on speed? Is there enough time spent on development of the movements that a baseball player needs? But sometimes as coaches, young coaches, we get caught up in just hitting or just throwing or just running. And it's just like we need to really organize our time in order to build the strength and in these athletes. So a lot of times I'll go and see young athletes and their intent, they'll do 25 push-ups and they'll do them incorrectly. And I'll say to the coach, how about we do just 5 slow push-ups, and that will take care of the throwing program, and that will take care of a lot of things that give us a hard time in practice, right? It's not the actual reps that we need, it's the intent of doing them correctly. And I think you have to have that in every single practice as a high school coach, because you don't have a strength and conditioning coordinator. You don't have you don't have all these things. So you have to incorporate all that as a high school coach into your practice. And there's 15 minutes that you could use at the end of practice to really develop. There's 15 minutes at the start of practice that you could really use to develop. And so you look at that 30-minute segment in an hour and a half practice or an hour and 45-minute practice, and you could get it in if you have intent in your practice.
Absolutely. I think that what can't be understated too about the team in the weight room is there's a different there's a different energy to it that really galvanizes the competitive spirit of a team. It's a culture enhancer, no doubt, especially when you can do it safely. If you can do it with intensity and safety, I don't know of anything that galvanizes a team and brings together guys. And it's like, it's so rare. Think about it. When you're practicing on the field, it's so rare to have your whole team cheering for you. It doesn't happen in the weight room, just the way you described your max days in college, Dan. Like, you get guys that are in your face screaming for you, and that's a different energy. There's kids that don't talk to each other all of the time, but if I see you in front of me and I'm about to go for my deadlift max and I can feel you cheering for me, man, that really makes me feel better and closer to my teammates. And that's important. That's very important.
Well, and it's doing hard things together. Again, like I said earlier, the weight room is not everybody's favorite, but everybody has to do it. And you guys do it together and it'll just bring you guys together. But I mean, to your point, when I was playing football, like I was on the offensive side of the ball and some of my best friends were on the defensive side of the ball. At practice, I wouldn't see them until we were getting on the bus Friday to drive to where we were going to play Saturday. And it'd be like, how was your guys' practice week? Like, are you guys ready and stuff? Like, I haven't seen you in a week. I hope you guys are ready, because we had the scout team for us and stuff. Like, we were just on completely different fields. But in the weight room, they were my training partners and we were together there. And it's the best way to bring people together, especially athletes.
Absolutely. Dan, thank you for your time. Just real quick before we sign off, where can people find you, contact you, your social media, and at Slam?
Yeah. So social media, Instagram is Perse Performance, Perse, my last name. We also have Slammers North Performance, which I also run, and you do a better job about that. You can contact me through there. I'm more active there than anything. But if anybody needs to email me from Slammers, Perse, D as in Dan, Perse at Slammers North.
Outstanding. Thank you, Coach. Thanks again for another great episode. I'll see you on the next one.
Hey,
Dan, you're awesome.
Can I add one
you're
thing
awesome. Oh, yeah.
before you go? Don't step over dollars to pick up dimes, Dan said. And make sure the make sure the parents understand what he was talking about right there. Do not step over dollars to pick up dimes, buddy.
Yep, that's the key.
And that just became the title of this episode.
There you go. I love it.
Absolutely. Thanks for that call out, Coach. Always great to be with you.
Yeah.
Dan, Slammers is lucky to have you. You're an absolute guru, dude, man. I've loved working with you and I love watching you work. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
I appreciate it, guys. This was fun.
All right.
Thanks,
See you next time.
All right. Thanks, Tag.